If I can call this meeting to order. Good evening, and welcome to the Juvenile Welfare Board's first of two public hearings for consideration and adoption of the FY23 millage rate and budget. This public hearing is being held in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statutes. I will ask Diana Caro to proceed with the proposed FY23 tentative millage rate portion of her presentation.
Good evening. I'm Diana Caro, Senior Manager of the Budget and Business Services Department, and we're going to start our presentation tonight. Oops, there we go. With the budget timeline. So it shows that tonight's meeting was noticed by the property appraiser's mailing of the trim notices on August 22nd. And then in accordance with Florida statutes, section 189.016, the tentative FY23 budget was posted to JWB's website by September 2nd. And tonight we're here for the first public hearing, which, as Mr. McCurrick stated earlier, the content and format of this first public hearing is mandated by Florida statutes, sections 200. And the purpose of tonight's hearing is for the board to adopt resolutions to approve a tentative millage rate and budget in that particular order. On September 18th, we will advertise our second and final public hearing in the Tampa Bay Times, and that final public hearing will be held on September 21st, 2022. And final approval of the millage rate and budget will occur at that final public hearing. And October 1st is the start of our fiscal year. So one of the important points in tonight's hearing is that we're proposing to reduce the millage rate to 0.8508 mils, which for the average homeowner with an average home taxable value of $188,488, they would pay to JWB $160 for the year. While this represents a $3 increase in the amount paid from the prior year, it also is a $9 savings over what would have been paid had you maintained the millage rate at 0.8981 mils. This is also the first time the board will be reducing the millage rate since fiscal year 2013. This next slide shows the FY23 budget in blue with the context of the prior 6 years ad valorem revenue and beginning fund balance in orange, and our forecasted ad valorem revenue and beginning fund balance in green. What we're showing here is that while the ad valorem revenue has an increase of 7.4% or $6.3 million, from $85 million in FY22 to $91.5 million in FY23, the beginning fund balance, which is part of our funds available for appropriation, has grown more significantly, really beginning in FY21. And in FY23, it increases by 26% or $11 million from $42.6 million to $53.7 million. The fund balance has increased primarily as a result of many of JWB's cost reimbursement funded programs. They were unable to fully utilize their allocated funds due to staffing shortages, high turnover, as a continued impact of COVID-19. The FY23 budget proposes to begin spending down the excess fund balance, which currently exceeds the board's target of 25% for unassigned fund balance, so that it would be within the board's target by fiscal year 27. And while we're here tonight only to adopt the millage rate and budget for fiscal year 23, the green forecasted part of this chart also reflects the board's direction to adopt a tentative reduced millage rate for fiscal year 23 that could be sustained for 2 years before increasing it back to the current rate of 0.8981 mils beginning in fiscal year 25. This next slide shows that when you take the ad valorem revenues that we showed on the previous slide and adjust it to account for inflation, instead of seeing an upward trend like we saw in the previous slide from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 23, you actually have ad valorem revenue increases that have not been keeping pace with inflation, resulting in a downward trend line. So for the board's first required action today, which is to adopt the fiscal year 23 tentative millage rate, this slide shows that as a result of property values increasing 13.17%, The board has proposed a tentative millage rate of 0.508, which requires a majority vote or 6 affirmative votes. In accordance with Florida statutes, this slide also notes that the percentage increase in the millage rate over the rolled back rate of 0.8017 mils is 6.12%. While the proposed millage rate is greater than the rolled back rate, it's also a 5.27% reduction from the 0.8981 millage rate that's been in place since fiscal year 2013. The proposed millage rate would yield ad valorem revenues of $91.5 million, which is a $6.3 million increase from the prior year. So the increase in the millage rate over the rolled back rate, along with the spend down of the excess fund balance, would be used primarily to fund strategies to respond to the inflation rate, which is the highest we've seen since 1982, and workforce challenges by, one, providing almost $3 million in cost of living adjustments to our funded programs in order to maintain existing service levels and program quality, and by providing just over $5 million for workforce stabilization for our funded programs to help them to address recruitment and retention issues. We also have $6.31 million for future programming to fund new programs informed by JWB's strategic plan, and that'll be brought to the board to award in December and February of fiscal year 23. And we also have an additional $3.37 million over the prior year budgeted to continue the implementation of several specific strategies in the FY 21-25 strategic plan. So the good news is we're continuing to invest in the strategic plan, and we're reducing the millage rate, which is a great thing to be able to present tonight. And with that, open it up to any questions.
This is the public comment and questions portion of the hearing of the tentative millage rate for fiscal year 2023. Are there any comments or questions? So if there's no further comments and questions or from the public at this time, we would now like to hear from the board members. Do I have any board members have any comments or questions? Seeing none? Does any board member recommend any changes to the tentative millage rate?
Move approval.
So,
Hang on.
stop you procedurally.
Can't do
I
that
need to
yet.
read from a script or?
Ms.
Yep.
Houghton needs to read the resolution.
All right,
We'll take
yeah,
the
let's get to that part.
motion.
Okay. All right, so the board now must consider the resolution to set the tentative millage rate. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY 23 tentative millage.
This is Resolution Fiscal Year 23-01, a resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem taxes for Pinellas County for fiscal year 2023, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 7, 2022, adopted fiscal year tentative millage rate following a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. And whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation within Pinellas County has been certified by the county property appraiser to the Juvenile Welfare Board as $110,870,536,125. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, that the fiscal year operating millage rate is .8508 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of .8017 mils by 6.12%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
All right, I call for a motion and a second to adopt the FY 23 tentative millage resolution. I have a motion and a second. I will now ask Julia to call on each board member for their vote.
Brian Ongst Jr.,
Yes.
Chief James Milligan,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Bartlett,
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Gerard,
Yes.
Judge Patrice Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick.
Yes.
That is the end of the roll call.
Okay. I will now ask Diana Carrera to proceed with the proposed FY23 tentative budget portion of her presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So for the budget portion of the presentation, the total budget amount we're looking for you to adopt tonight, which is in the FY23 tentative budget that's attached to your memo, is $145,558,595. This includes the $91.8 million in revenue reflected on this slide, plus the $53.7 million as your beginning fund balance. So, and as it's reflected on this slide, it's a $6.5 million increase from the prior year. And you can also see that the interest revenue is budgeted to increase from $100,000 to $280,000 as a result of the higher interest rates we've been seeing as of late, as well as the board's recent change in investment strategies, which we discussed earlier today at the board meeting. As for the program expenditures budget, it reflects an increase of $16.7 million over the prior year for some of the things we just presented earlier. It also includes a $477,326 increase for the capital and technology request for applications. But that increase is just a one-time carryover for items that were awarded in the prior year, but were unable to be delivered or completed by September 30th due to supply chain issues. We also budgeted contingency at $750,000. During the pandemic, contingency had been increased to $1 million, which was primarily used to respond to food emergencies, but we expect to eventually reduce this back to the pre-pandemic levels of $500,000 in future years. This slide shows how the $87.5 million we have budgeted for Children and Family Services is allocated across our 17 program subtypes, from the largest investment in out-of-school time programs at just over $18 million down to the smallest program subtype for the Fatherhood Initiative. As for the administrative expenditures, we have a budget increase of $1.2 million in salaries over the prior year, which includes a 10.2% cost of living adjustment, as well as the addition of 5 positions to support the new programs that will be awarded in fiscal year 23. The budget benefits are budgeted to increase approximately $395,000 over the prior year, and operating expenses are budgeted to increase approximately $393,000. So despite the admin rate increasing by 0.52% to 7.66%, the admin rate is still well below the board's target of 10%, and it's still less than our admin rate in fiscal year 20, which was 8.13%. So as I stated earlier, the beginning fund balance for fiscal year 23 is $53.7 million, and at the board's direction, we are budgeting to spend down fund balance by approximately $21 million, which would leave us with a budgeted ending fund balance of $32.7 million. And with that, again, available for any questions.
This is the public comment and questions portion of the hearing, tentative budget and fiscal year 2023. Do we have any questions or comments? We do have none. Do the board members have any comments or questions? Do the board members have any recommendations or any changes to the tentative budget? Hearing none, the board must now consider the resolution to set the tentative budget. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY23 tentative budget.
This is Resolution Fiscal Year 2302, a resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 7, 2022, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065, and whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County set forth the appropriations and revenue estimate for the budget for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $145,558,595, Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, that the fiscal year 2023 tentative budget be adopted. The resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
I now call for a motion and a second to adopt the FY23 tentative budget resolution.
So moved.
Having a motion and a second, I will ask Julia to call on each board member for their vote.
Mr. Brian Ongst Jr. Yes. Chief James Milligan.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Bartlett.
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Hendrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Gerard.
Yes.
Judge Patrice Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick.
Yes,
That is the end of the roll call.
thank you. With that, unless the board members have any further comments, this concludes the first public hearing of the FY23 millage and budget. I now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to let everybody know, I'm not gonna be here on the 21st. So that is a change of plan for me, but if you have a quorum problem, I just wanted you to know that now. I will not be present on September 21st.
We will figure it out.
Okay.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? To second? Meeting's adjourned.